Think of a young boy growing up in the rubble of post-war Japan, destined for a life of hardship, who rises to become the most powerful Yakuza boss, commanding an empire worth $80 billion. Such is the tale of Kenichi Shinoda. His journey from the grimy docks of Keshu to the feared leader of the Yamaguchi-gumi is a tale of ruthless ambition and strategic brilliance. How did he transform from a poor boy into Japan's most notorious underworld kingpin? Kenichi Shinoda was born on January 25th, 1942 in Ino Prefecture, Keshu, Japan. His early years were marked by the chaos and instability of post-World War II Japan. The country was in shambles, trying to rebuild after the devastation of the war. Food was scarce, jobs were hard to come by, and the streets were often dangerous. Despite these harsh conditions, Kenichi managed to stay out of trouble during his childhood. While many of his peers got sucked into petty crimes and street gangs, he focused on his education. He attended Idaperal Fisheries High School, which wasn't exactly a prestigious institution, but it offered a glimmer of hope for a better future. At school, Kenichi was a diligent student, managing to steer clear of the bad influences that surrounded him. After graduating, Kenichi landed a job at a major fishery company in his neighborhood. It was a decent job for someone from his background, offering a steady income and a sense of stability. But let's face it was far from glamorous. The work was grueling, involving long hours and physically demanding tasks. Kenichi spent his days handling heavy loads of fish, dealing with the stench of the docks, and enduring the harsh weather conditions. It was a tough life, but it paid the bills. However, Kenichi's life took a dramatic turn when he started to develop relationships with members of the Japanese underworld. While working at the fishery, Kenichi's life was anything but easy. The back-breaking labor and the stench of fish might have been enough to break a lesser man, but Kenichi was made of tougher stuff. It was during these long, grueling days at the docks that Kenichi started to make some shady connections. You know how it goes. Where there's hard labor and tough conditions, there's always a darker side lurking nearby. The fishery wasn't just a place for catching fish, it was also a hub for smuggling, black market dealings, and a meeting spot for some pretty unsavory characters. Kenichi, always observant, starts to get friendly with some of these characters. They were part of the local underworld, and they saw potential in him. Maybe it was his tough demeanor or his ability to handle pressure, but they began to take him under their wing. Before long, Kenichi found himself drawn deeper into their world, a world that promised excitement, power, and money, things that his job at the fishery could never offer. It wasn't long before Kenichi was introduced to the Hiroi-gumi, a small-time gang operating in his area. This gang was a satellite of the much larger and notorious Yamaguchi-gumi, one of Japan's most feared Yakuza organizations. Joining the Hiroi-gumi was like being inducted into a secret society, complete with its own rules, rituals, and codes of honor. The Hiroi-gumi wasn't playing around. They were all involved in all sorts of illegal activities: extortion, gambling, protection rackets, and of course, the occasional violent altercation. Kenichi quickly proved his worth to the gang. He made it clear that he wasn't just a foot soldier. He had a keen mind and a knack for understanding the dynamics of power and influence. One of the first major incidents that marked Kenichi's rise in the Hiroi-gumi was a violent clash with a rival gang. These weren't just fistfights. They were talking about knife fights and brawls where lives were on the line. Kenichi's ruthlessness and willingness to do whatever it took set him apart. In the late 1960s, Kenichi was fully immersed in criminal life, doing whatever it took to expand the influence of the Hiroi-gumi. The gang was involved in serious crimes that brought in big money, and well, big trouble. Kenichi and his crew were into extortion, illegal gambling, and protection rackets, squeezing every yen they could from the local businesses and anyone who dared to cross them. They were also constantly clashing with rival gangs, each fighting a brutal struggle for dominance. The streets were a battleground, and Kenichi was determined to come out on top. Then came the event that really put Kenichi on the map: the murder of Diapon Hokai in 1969. Diapon was a rival boss, and Kenichi took him out in a bloody, dramatic fashion using a katana. The cold steel slicing through flesh, the shock and fear in the eyes of those who witnessed it. This was no ordinary killing. It was an execution designed to send a clear message to anyone who dared to challenge Kenichi or the Hiroi-gumi. As intended, the act of violence earned him a fearsome reputation and marked his violent entry into the Yakuza's higher echelons. But with great power came great notoriety. The law enforcement had been watching the growing violence and saw Kenichi as a major threat. Following the hit, they came down hard on him. In 1970, Kenichi was arrested and sentenced to 13 years in prison. Now, you might think that that would be the end of his criminal career, but prison only added to his legend. During his time behind bars from 1970 to 1984, Kenichi's reputation within the Yakuza only grew. He didn't just survive prison, he thrived in it. He earned respect from fellow inmates and Yakuza members alike, serving his time with a stoic demeanor and unwavering loyalty to his gang. He became something of a legend. His willingness to commit such a violent act and then take the fall without betraying his comrades ingratiated him to the higher-ups in the Yakuza. They saw in Kenichi a man of principle, someone who could be relied upon, and that's gold in the underworld. In 1984, after serving 13 years for the killing of Diapon Hokai, Shinoda walked out of prison as a free man. But the world he returned to had changed. The Hiroi-gumi, the gang he had once been a part of, had disbanded. They couldn't keep it together without his leadership, and now the field was wide open. Kenichi was determined not just to return to his old ways, but to rise even higher. He quickly reconnected with Takamine, a longtime associate and trusted friend. Together, they decided to form a new gang, the Kodokai. This wasn't just a small-time operation, it was a strategic move to create a powerful faction within the Yamaguchi-gumi, the largest and most notorious Yakuza operation in Japan. They had the backing of the Yamaguchi-gumi, which gave them the muscle and connections they needed to expand rapidly. And expand they did. The Kodokai wasn't content with just a small territory. Under Shinoda's ruthless and effective leadership, they started taking over areas left and right. They started taking over gambling dens, protection rackets, and any other profitable ventures they could get their hands on. By the late 1980s, the Kodokai had grown massively. They spread across 18 prefectures and boasted over 4,000 members. This rapid expansion wasn't just about gaining territory, it was about establishing dominance. Shinoda knew that to survive and thrive in the Yakuza world, you needed to be both feared and respected, qualities that he tried his best to earn throughout his criminal career. The Kodokai's presence was felt everywhere, and they were raking in money from all sorts of illegal activities. However, there was only so much territory that Kodokai could lay their hands on. Their aggressive expansion naturally led to clashes with other gangs and even within the Yamaguchi-gumi itself. Kenichi was no stranger to violence, and he handled these conflicts with the same ruthlessness that had defined his rise. He wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty, and neither were his men. They fought hard to protect their turf and expand their influence, using a mix of intimidation, strategic alliances, and outright violence. One of the most remarkable aspects of Shinoda's leadership was his ability to maintain loyalty among his followers. The Kodokai wasn't just a gang, it was a tightly knit organization with Shinoda at its helm. He inspired loyalty through his actions, his willingness to lead from the front, take risks, and protect his men. This loyalty was crucial in maintaining the unity and effectiveness of the Kodokai, especially as they faced numerous external threats. Just like that, Shinoda continued to climb the ranks within the Yamaguchi-gumi. After proving his mettle during the bloody Yamaguchi-Ichiwa War, his reputation was cemented. He was seen as a leader who wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty, someone who could be trusted to handle the most dangerous and delicate situations. This era was all about solidifying his position and expanding his influence. Kenichi Shinoda's rise was anything but gentle. Known for his ruthless actions and strategic mind, he didn't just maintain order within his ranks, he enforced it with an iron fist. If there were any dissenters or threats to his power, they were dealt with swiftly and brutally. This was a man who understood that in the Yakuza world, fear and respect go hand in hand. However, things took a huge turn in 1997. Shinoda faced a major challenge. He was arrested on charges of gun possession, a serious offense that could have derailed his ascent. The charges stemmed from an incident where a firearm was found in his possession. Law enforcement saw this as an opportunity to take down a major Yakuza figure. They went after him hard. However, the trial took an unexpected turn. Despite the seemingly damning evidence, Shinoda was found not guilty. The defense argued that the gun actually belonged to his bodyguard, who was willing to take the fall for his boss. This not guilty verdict was a huge relief for Shinoda, allowing him to avoid a lengthy prison sentence, but it also had broader implications. It demonstrated his ability to navigate the legal system and emerge unscathed, reinforcing his untouchable image within the Yakuza. Fast forward to 2004, and the stage was set for another pivotal moment in Shinoda's career. Yoshinori Watanabe, the fifth Gumicho boss of the Yamaguchi-gumi, took a leave of absence. This created a power vacuum at the top of the organization, and everyone was watching to see who would fill it. Shinoda, with his reputation and strategic acumen, was a prime candidate. The Yamaguchi-gumi needed strong leadership, and many within the organization saw Shinoda as the perfect fit. His ruthless efficiency, combined with his ability to inspire loyalty, made him an ideal choice. Finally, in 2004, he was appointed as the underboss, or Waka Gashira, effectively making him the second in command. This was a clear signal that Shinoda was being groomed for the top spot. In July 2005, Shinoda was officially promoted to Gumicho, the sixth boss of the Yamaguchi-gumi. This was no small feat. The Yamaguchi-gumi wasn't just any gang, it was the largest and most powerful Yakuza organization in Japan, and arguably the world. Taking the helm meant Shinoda was now at the apex of a sprawling criminal empire that included tens of thousands of members. The promotion ceremony was a big deal, not just for the organization, but for law enforcement too. They were on high alert, eager to catch any misstep. But here's where Shinoda showed his savvy. To throw off law enforcement and avoid any high-profile incidents, he made a symbolic journey to his promotion ceremony by train. Think of it like this: the soon-to-be most powerful Yakuza boss in Japan riding a public train, blending in with ordinary commuters. This move served as a clever way to evade the intense scrutiny from the authorities. Once he was officially in charge, the real work began. Shinoda faced immediate challenges. The Yamaguchi-gumi, despite its power, was not without internal strife and external threats. Rival factions within the organization were always a concern. Some members might have questioned his leadership or seen his rise as an opportunity to push their own agendas. To maintain control, Shinoda had to act swiftly and decisively. One of his first strategies was to consolidate power by ensuring his loyalists were placed in key positions. This wasn't just about favoritism, it was about creating a network of trust and loyalty that would back him in any conflict. He needed people he could rely on, those who would carry out his orders without hesitation and support his vision for the organization. Shinoda also had to deal with law enforcement, which was relentless in its pursuit of the Yakuza. The police were always looking for ways to crack down on the organization's activities, and Shinoda's promotion only intensified their efforts. He had to be careful, moving strategically to avoid giving them any ammunition that could be used against him. This meant tightening operations, making sure that any illegal activities were well concealed and that there were no leaks or weak links within his ranks. Externally, the Yamaguchi-gumi's dominance was constantly challenged by his rival gangs. Shinoda had to ensure that the organization's territory was protected and its influence expanded. This involved both diplomacy and force. He brokered deals where possible, but wasn't afraid to use violence to maintain the Yamaguchi-gumi's supremacy. His reputation for ruthlessness was already well established. He wasn't about to let anyone think he'd gone soft just because he was now the boss. Despite these challenges, Shinoda managed to steer the Yamaguchi-gumi through turbulent times. His leadership style, a blend of strategic brilliance and brutal enforcement, kept the organization strong and united. He continued to expand their operations, delving into various legal enterprises, whilst also investing in legitimate businesses to launder money and build a veneer of respectability. But when are things that stable in the underworld? In 2007, the Yamaguchi-gumi was thrust into the global spotlight with the shocking death of the Nagasaki mayor, Icho Ito. This wasn't just a random act of violence, it was a calculated assassination that sent shockwaves throughout Japan and beyond. Ito was gunned down in broad daylight, and the assailant was linked directly to the Yamaguchi-gumi. This brazen act of violence drew widespread condemnation and brought intense pressure on the Yakuza from law enforcement and the public alike. The message was clear: the Yamaguchi-gumi's reach was vast, and their methods were ruthless. For Shinoda, this incident was a massive headache. He was already navigating the complexities of leading the largest Yakuza organization in Japan, and now he had to deal with the fallout from an internationally condemned crime. The authorities ramped up their efforts to crack down on the Yamaguchi-gumi, scrutinizing their activities more closely than ever before. It was a time of heightened tension and increased danger for everyone involved. Following this high-profile event, you'd think that Shinoda might want to lay low, right? Well, that was exactly what he tried to do. Shinoda knew that his every move was being watched, both by the police and by rival factions within the Yakuza who might see his time behind bars as a sign of weakness. To stay under the radar, Shinoda had to be increasingly cautious. He He minimized his public appearances and operated through trusted intermediaries. Despite the need for caution, he continued to exert control over the Yamaguchi-gumi, ensuring that the organization remained powerful and profitable. His strategy was to blend into the background while maintaining a firm grip on his empire, a delicate balancing act that required constant vigilance. But the challenges didn't end there. The Yamaguchi-gumi's activities had caught the attention of international authorities, particularly in the United States. The US government, recognizing the Yakuza's involvement in global criminal activities, decided to take action. They imposed sanctions on Shinoda and the Yamaguchi-gumi, freezing their assets and limiting their ability to conduct business internationally. These sanctions were a significant blow, not just financially, but also symbolically. It was a clear message that their influence and reach had crossed too many lines, and the international community wasn't going to stand by. For Shinoda, these sanctions meant tightened operations even further. He had to find new ways to move money and conduct business without drawing additional scrutiny. The Yamaguchi-gumi's vast network of illicit and legitimate enterprises provided some cover, but the sanctions made everything more complicated. Every transaction had to be carefully planned and executed to avoid detection. This period of international scrutiny was one of the most challenging times for Shinoda and the Yamaguchi-gumi. It tested their resilience and adaptability in the face of intense pressure. However, despite everything, Shinoda somehow managed to keep the organization afloat and even thriving. After navigating the turbulent waters of international scrutiny and legal battles, Shinoda knew that to keep the Yamaguchi-gumi strong, he needed to reorganize and tighten his grip on the organization. He started by placing his most loyal and trusted associates in key positions. This move was crucial. In the world of the Yakuza, loyalty is everything. By surrounding himself with people who were fiercely loyal to him, Shinoda ensured that his commands would be followed without question, and that any potential internal dissent would be swiftly dealt with. Under Shinoda's leadership, the Yamaguchi-gumi didn't just survive, it thrived. Despite the constant pressure from law enforcement and rival gangs, they maintained their dominance and profitability. Fortune magazine estimated that the Yamaguchi-gumi's annual revenues were around $80 billion. That's right, $80 billion. We're talking about an organization with its tentacles in everything from traditional rackets like extortion and gambling to more modern ventures like financial crimes and real estate. This level of profitability required a blend of ruthless enforcement and savvy business acumen, both of which Shinoda possessed in spades. Shinoda's leadership style is a mix of strict enforcement and calculated strategy. He is known for his harsh punishments for those who crossed him or broke the Yamaguchi-gumi's code. But it wasn't all about violence. Shinoda also has a keen sense of business. He pushed the Yamaguchi-gumi into new ventures and adapted to the changing times. This adaptability was key to their continued success. While other gangs faltered, the Yamaguchi-gumi expanded, both in terms of territory and influence. They became a powerhouse not just in Japan, but on the global stage of organized crime to this day. What are your thoughts on Shinoda's story? Let us know in the comments below. If you like our content, don't forget to check out the channel. We've got many more stories from the Underworld to share with you. See you in the next one.